To start your conference, that entry is not valid. To start your conference, press 1. To start your conference now, press star. Or please state your name after the tone, then press pound. You will now be placed into conference. For a menu of conference commands, press star star at any time. Joined.
Carol Paikin Miller.
Joined. Joined.
Trustee Archer.
Joined. Joined. Joined.
Hey, I have a presentation.
Tracy McKillop.
Joined.
We'll stick it.
Maria Felix Miller.
Joined.
Christine Bingham.
Joined. Joined.
I'm just saying. So ECOM's report to board? Yes.
Denise Dawson.
Joined.
Do you want to come down to, Dave, do you want to come down?
Hemi Dees.
Joined.
Yeah, you can.
I got to follow the rules.
Joined.
No, no.
subscribe something in the bottom of the
No, no.
I'm thinking you're gonna need to be working so that she can decorate. I don't think now's a good time.
I'm just going to call the meeting to order, please. So welcome to the November 9th board meeting. And I'll start with just confirming who we have with us. So for trustees on the phone, in the room, we have Trustee Buck, Trustee Mahalan, Trustee Dango, Trustee Johnstone, Trustee Galindo, Student Trustee Hessler, Student Trustee Zakar. And I do anticipate that Student Trustee Zaghi will be joining us shortly. On the phone, do we have Trustee Archer?
Present.
Trustee Bingham?
Present.
Trustee Deeth?
Present.
Trustee Miller?
Present. Thank you.
Trustee Paikin-Miller?
Yes, I'm here.
Trustee Tutt?
Present.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. The Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board acknowledges our presence on the ancestral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee Confederacy land as determined by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt represents the treaty relationship between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and Anishinaabe with respect to sharing the land and resources thereon. The intent of this agreement is for all nations sharing this territory to do so responsibly, respectfully, and sustainably in perpetuity. We respect the long-standing relationships with the local Indigenous communities, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Six Nations of the Grand River. With that, I'll ask trustees to rise for the singing of O Canada. So I'll look for approval of the agenda. Looking to Trustee Buck, seconded by Trustee Mulholland. And do we have anyone voting against the agenda tonight? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move along to confirmation of the minutes from October 26th. I'll give trustees a moment to look over. Do we have any comments or changes on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, we'll continue to move along. I do want to acknowledge that we now have Sego Wana Gala Dats, which is Mohawk for translation for student trustee Zagi, who has joined us in the room this evening. And I will be continuing to utilize this Sego Wana Garla Dats whenever I am referring to student trustee Zagi. With that, we'll move along to reports from trustee special committees. Human Resources, October 20th, and I'll turn to Trustee Deeth. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, there were 3 information items at our meeting. Information item A was an employee and staffing update. So as we know, in preparation for the new school year, 2021, the staffing team developed and initiated a recruitment and hiring plan in response to general staffing needs as well as in response to COVID-19 and the need to establish an elementary remote learning program. So as we know, HR is committed to maintaining healthy occasional pools to ensure coverage and minimize the number of unfilled teaching and support positions. And to do that, hiring additional occasional EAs, office clerical and technical staff, and QP caretakers will continue this fall. In collaboration with Johanna, our Human Rights and Equity Officer, HR recently connected with 5 local settlement agencies to provide information sessions and focused hiring rounds for clients of these settlement agencies. Our professional development department has implemented an employee onboarding program for all newly hired staff. And as part of this training program, all occasional staff received a full day of training on COVID-19 safe return to school protocols and a paid half day of occupational health and safety training. Item B, employee equity audit update. We have been, as you know, engaged in an employment equity audit to revise the board's current hiring practices. And the audit is now complete, and HR is awaiting the recommendations. So major steps have included a review of our recruitment and selection processes and practices, 36 one-on-one interviews with staff, union representatives, and senior leaders, as well as 12 employee focus groups and participation of over 1,200 employees in an online staff survey. A full report and staff recommendations, including the action plan, will be brought forward to our next committee meeting. And finally, item C, the employee attendance update. So staff continue with the implementation of the employee support and attendance management procedure in support of the attendance management policy 4.2 on September 1st, 2019. So staff absences have been reduced by 4.08 days when we compare the number of sick leave absences from September 2018 to August 2019, the school year, as compared to September 2019 to August 2020 school year. And it's also recognized the impact of the ministerial order has had on this data. And with that, I'd like to move the report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Deeth. And I'll look for a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Danko. With that, I'll just move through to questions. So I'll start with trustees in the room. Is there any questions? Trustee Danko.
Thank you. Through the chair, just one quick question. Do the absences in the update for item C include absences related to COVID screening and isolation?
Director?
So through the chair to Trustee Danko, I'll ask Superintendent Jamie Nunn to elaborate, but I believe what you're seeing is the results from 1819 to 1920. Because we were closed from March to end of June with ministerial order. This does not reflect any data for this year. That data would come to HR committee in the quarterly updates. So it does not at this point in time, but I'll just look at Superintendent Nunn is shaking his head saying that's correct.
Trustee Danko.
Thank you. That's my mistake. Thanks for clarifying.
Further questions or comments to the report? I'll turn to the trustees online. Trustee Tutt?
No questions, thank you.
Trustee Paikin-Miller?
No questions, thank you.
Trustee Miller?
No questions, thank you.
Trustee Deeth?
No questions, thank you.
Trustee Bingham?
No questions, thank you.
Trustee Archer?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Archer.
Left.
Okay, so we'll just turn now. Is there any, so on the motion to approve the report, is anyone voting against? And I'll start with those online. Is there anyone voting against receiving the report? Hearing none and noting that Trustee Archer has left the room. For those in the room, is anyone voting against? Seeing none, the report passes. Moving along now to item 7.1, Finance and Facilities, from October 22nd, and I'll turn to Trustee Danko to bring forward the report.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm happy to bring the Finance and Facilities Committee report from October 22nd. We have the first item is an action item regarding Sherwood Secondary School. Staff presented a report and provided 3 potential options at this point. One is a status quo, where we continue to submit the business case and request funding from the ministry for a new school on the existing property.
Trustee Archer.
Joined.
Option 2 is where students would move temporarily to Barton while renewal and benchmark work was completed at Sherwood. And option 3 would be to complete renewal or benchmark work at Barton and move students to Barton permanently when it's completed. Staff did note that we have requested funding from the ministry for this project 7 times in total.
Sorry, just one moment. We can hear noise in the background. Someone's not on mute, so if you can please mute yourselves, as I believe we can hear television. Trustee Danko, please continue.
Thank you. So we have submitted a request for funding from the ministry for this particular project 7 times in total and have not been successful. The committee recommends that staff be directed to submit 1 final business case and request funding from the ministry for a new school on the existing property. And in the event the request is not successful, then staff move to enter into a public consultation to solicit feedback from the community. We have a monitoring item, and that was our elementary enrollment update. So we did receive an update on the 2020-21 enrollment for elementary schools and the impact on the budget. So trustees will note in the report that enrollment is down approximately 1,750 students compared to our projections. And of course, that impacts our grant for student needs. The projected decrease in our GSN relating to enrollment is $15.2 million. In addition, we had budgeted for $700,000 in community use of schools grant, but that needs to be removed because we are not using schools for rentals or after hours. There will be a reduction in teachers because of the decreased enrollment, and we've already seen a reorganization happen. But as a result of our board motion that authorized staff to spend up to $9 million of reserve funds for this school year to lower in-person class sizes in elementary, the impact has been less than it would have been. Staff have committed to continue to monitor enrollment and expenditures, and we will receive another report to Finance and Facilities in November when we will look at what is needed to balance our 2020-21 revised budget. With that, I would like to move the report.
Thank you. And I will turn to Trustee Galindo to second the report. And then with that, I'll start with questions. Questions to, if you can, we'll have it to both items A or the monitoring items, but we'll start with Trustee Archer. Would you like to, questions or comments?
Okay, can you hear me? I'm having trouble with my mute button.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I would just ask that we try one more time for money for a new build for Sherwood. And maybe we should send a letter, ask that we send a letter to our MPP on our behalf, to speak on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. So speaking in favor of the recommended action item, Trustee Bingham, questions or comments?
Yes, I do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the last time that we submitted this to the ministry, they came back with a response of, let's wait and see of the new Nora Francis Henderson opening and how that would impact. And now that it's opened, we haven't had enough time for understanding the impact. And I believe we should at least one more time send this in, because this is necessary. As far as I'm concerned, it's very necessary. But if I'm correct, I remember the ministry saying, we'll see what kind of impact Nora Francis Henderson has. Is that true?
Thank you. And so, Trustee Bingham, you're speaking for the motion, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Trustee Deeth?
Just a question. Because I know at one point there was some concern in regards to potentially the ministry withdrawing the funds for the renovation or the funds that we did receive for Sherwood. Is that still a possibility, or is there any danger of that?
Director Figueredo?
So I will ask Associate Director Stacy Zuger to clarify that around funds we received from Sherwood, I don't think there were any ministry funds. It was funds we set aside in our benchmark work capital plan that we would then set aside and ask maybe for less. But I'll ask Associate Director Stacy Zucker to clarify those amounts and that I'm correct with no ministry funding to this point.
Thank you, Director. And through the chair, the Director is correct. We have not received any funding specifically for Sherwood from the ministry. We have, through our capital plan and through the secondary facility benchmarks, estimated the cost of the secondary facility benchmarks at Sherwood at $9 million. And the board approved allocating that $9 million as part of the business case to support the new build. So if the new build would cost $30 million, we would contribute $9 million towards it, and then the ministry, we would ask for the additional 21. That would be the intention. And so that money has been set aside by the board, and board staff will continue to set that funding aside until other direction is provided.
Further questions?
Thank you. So, thanks for clarifying. My apologies. I thought we had received some funding for renovations. No, I for giving it one more time. I think building on what Trustee Archer said, have we, and I'm sure we have because this has been ongoing for a long time, have we spoke to our local MPP about supporting this?
Director Figueredo.
So through the chair, I specifically have not. I don't know if Associate Director Zucker has any update. I don't think staff has, but I don't know if any trustees have, or previous trustees might have. So I can't say I have.
I'm seeing heads shaking no around the table, Trustee Deeth and 2 other trustees on the phone. So no, there has not been a conversation to our knowledge with MPP Taylor. Further questions?
No, thank you.
Moving along to Trustee Miller.
Thank you. Just one quick question. I do think it does deserve one last chance. But if perhaps someone can just clarify, do we have any sense as to why the proposals keep getting turned down? Any clarity, or is this essentially we just keep getting a no?
Director Figueredo, if you could please provide details of communications that we have received back.
So thank you through the chair. I'll ask Associate Zucker to provide an update in terms of any kind of feedback we have received from the ministry. I know every time we submit a business case, we do have conversations, but I also know that across the province, and like us, we submit quite a list of business cases, but this has been one that has been denied even with our strategy of using $9 million of our own funds. But I'll ask the Associate Zucker if she has more detail, any information from ministry at this point.
Thank you, Director. And through the chair, we have 6 out of the 7 attempts for funding that we've received feedback from the ministry with regards to why we did not receive funding. The last time that we received feedback was in March 2018. And at that time, the ministry said that they weren't approving it as the expected savings and removal of renewal backlog does not sufficiently support the expected project cost. And they also indicated that the ministry would like to assess the local utilization plan upon completion of Henderson before considering project approvals in the future. So we did have a discussion with the ministry in October of this year about this project before we brought this to the Finance and Facilities Committee. And although they are not providing feedback for the latest submission, they did indicate that the projects that they have been approving have been really in 2 categories, one of them being growth, and we saw that approval for us through the approval of the new Binbrook Elementary School, and the other one being the consolidation and removal of excess capacity or closing 2 or 3 schools to build 1 school. So really that consolidation piece was the other thing that they were expecting. And in this case, the rebuilding of Sherwood on that property does not meet either one of those criteria. And again, not to say that we can't apply for it or that they couldn't give funding. It's just that the projects that they were approving did meet one of those 2 criteria. And so that's really where they were looking for the future, for the past business cases that were submitted, and they weren't able to speak to the future as they wouldn't have had that information at that time.
Further questions?
When is the next submission, and will we have enough data from Nora Henderson's role in this? Will those 2 things kind of come together? Will we have enough information to kind of include in our next submission, or is our submission going to come ahead of when we'll be able to really see what the neighborhood needs?
Director Figueredo.
I'll pass to Associate Director Zucker, just to clarify what boards had heard. We heard in the fall, and another round was just grants that were provided for new schools from the September 2019 submission. I'll ask Associate Director Zucker if we have any update on when the next opportunity for new school builds or new capital investment is forthcoming.
Thank you, Director. And through the chair, staff have not heard of any additional funding opportunities coming forward, and we don't know when the next opportunity will be. It usually is on an annual basis, but it has been longer than 1 year. And with the funding that the ministry has been providing for COVID relief, who knows when the next submission for capital will be. That being said, will we have enough information? We absolutely will be in a position to submit as strong a business case as we can when that opportunity arises. The reason that they are asking us to look at Henderson in particular is because where Henderson was temporarily housed at Barton and Sherwood are actually in the same catchment, meaning that students that attend the Sherwood currently live in the same catchment that Barton is located in. And so when that happens, the ministry looks at that as not a pupil accommodation review, but actually just a movement of a school population within their catchment. So they treat it differently. And that's why we were asked to look at that, at the impact of Henderson. So it wasn't actually the new build of Henderson and the impact, but it was really the impact of freeing up the temporary holding space of Barton.
Trustee Miller?
Wonderful, thank you. I very much appreciate that response, and I'm supportive of the recommendation. Thank you.
Trustee Paikin-Miller?
Yes, I'm supportive of the recommendation.
Trustee Tutt? Trustee Tutt?
No questions.
Okay, I'll turn to those in the room. Is there any questions from trustees in the room? Seeing heads shaking no. To that, as I did not hear anyone speak against, I'm just going to ask, is there any votes against the action item from Trustee Mulholland? Trustee Mulholland? Please ask a question.
If it's possible, it may have been mentioned, but I wondered if we have the cost of what we've already spent on that school. You know, the brick wall, the asbestos, the new gym, the painting, and how much would it cost to finish the job?
Director Figueredo, if you could please let us know finance details. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Trustee Mulholland, for the question. How much have we spent on Sherwood? I'm looking for Associate Director Stacey Zucker if she can provide any insight. I know also Senior Manager Dave Anderson is here as well. What do we have today to that question? If not, we'll take it away, but I think we have some information to share.
Thank you, Director. And through the chair, offhand, Trustee Mulholland, we don't have that information of how much we've spent, but we certainly can put it together. We expect that in order for us to address the renewal needs at Sherwood, the current renewal needs, and the secondary facility benchmarks, it would cost approximately $15 million for us to be able to do that. And the reason for the significant cost, and it is double what we would usually spend in an average secondary school, is as a result of the asbestos abatement that would have to occur in order to be able to perform that work.
Trustee Mulholland, further questions? Okay. I saw Trustee Danko. Nope, never mind. I'll just state that I am in full support of this. I spoke to this at the Finance and Facilities meeting, and In fact, I believe I made the motion, but I do believe that we owe it to the community to explore this option one last time. Only after which, if we do not receive a positive result, meaning funding from the ministry, I do believe we then owe it to the community to go back and perform consultation. While technically under the rules, public consultation would not be required because we already have conducted consultations. That was 2 terms ago. So we've gone through 2 full boards of trustees. That was a very long time ago, and certainly the students that were in the school at that time are no longer attending Sherwood. Perhaps they may have siblings that are, but I think for many of the families and students and staff even that are currently involved in the school, they would be potentially unaware of the discussions at that time, and things have changed, and it's important that we continue to go back to our communities and provide consultation because our board values input from our communities. So I'll leave it at that. With that, I will now turn and go to a vote. Do we have anyone online voting against the recommended action? And I'll read it out. That staff be directed to submit one final business case and request funding from the ministry for a new school on the existing property. And in the event that the request is not successful, then staff move to enter into a public consultation to solicit feedback from the community. Do we have anyone online voting against? Hearing none, I'll turn to the room. Do we have anyone in the room voting against? Seeing and hearing none, the motion does pass. And I'll just, sorry. So with that, that concludes 7.1, and we'll move now to item 8, which is the Parent Involvement Committee, and I will turn to Trustee Buck to please bring forward the update.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we met October 20th, and we had elections held for chair, both positions for chair and vice chair. I'm pleased to announce that Amanda Furman was re-elected as chair for another 2-year term.
Sorry, Trustee Buck, can you please lean in and just please enunciate just a little more slowly and clearly for those on the phone? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for letting me know. I'm sorry. I'm pleased to announce that Amanda Furman was re-elected as chair of Parent Involvement Committee, with Mike Palma re-elected as vice chair. Both have served in these roles in the past and have done amazing jobs. We went over PIC norms and values, as there were several new committee members, and it was a good refresher for those who were returning. We then received an update from Superintendent Stefanian and Manager of Communications and Community Engagement, Sean McKillop. They provided an update to members on the enhanced public health measures taking place in our schools. Committee members had the opportunity to ask questions. We then received an update from Manager McKillop on the virtual session scheduled for November 4th. A new school council handbook has been created to support this work. We are a chatty bunch when we meet, so we ended up needing to push Superintendent Torrens' scheduled update on program to the November meeting, but yeah, we had a good time reconnecting after many months apart. And with that, I'll move the report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Buck. I'll turn to those on the phone and I'll quickly ask, is there any questions for Trustee Buck? Hearing none, I'll turn to trustees in the room. Is there any, sorry, and my apologies, I do need a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Galindo. To trustees in the room, any questions on the report? Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn now to a vote. Is anyone voting against passing the report on the phone? Hearing none, I'll turn to those in the room. Is anyone voting against passing the report? Seeing and hearing none, the motion does pass. Thank you, trustees. The report passes. Turning now to item 9, report from Committee of the Whole earlier this evening. Vice Chair Danko.
Thank you, and through the chair, it's my pleasure to present the report of the private session of the Committee of the Whole held earlier this evening. That the HR Committee report from October 20th, 2020 be received, and that the Finance and Facilities Committee report from October 22nd, 2020 be received.
Thank you, Vice Chair Danko. I'll have that seconded by Trustee Mahaland. And with that, I'll just ask if there's anyone voting against the motion to receive the Committee of the Whole report from earlier this evening. Trustees on the phone? Hearing none, I'll turn to trustees here in the room tonight. Is there anyone voting against the motion to receive the Committee of the Whole report? I'm noting myself. And that passes. Thank you, trustees. And with that, we'll move now on to item 10, oral reports from liaison committees. Item A, Trustee City School Board Liaison Committee. I have no items to report as the committee has not met. Moving along to Hamilton-Wentworth Home and School Association, and I will turn to Trustee Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Hamilton-Wentworth Home and School Association continue to support local associations and members during these unprecedented times. At the OPSBA level, they have held 3 different webinars to support members on various topics, including engaging parents, the new back to school, and building relationships. From that point, connections and turnarounds have been good. This Thursday, they will be meeting with the Minister of Education to discuss and share some of the feedback they collected on online learning engagements. And the next home and school meeting is November 12th, Thursday, November 12th. Those are all the updates, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Galindo. Is there any questions from those on the phone? Hearing none, is there any questions from those in the room? Hearing none, thank you, Trustee Galindo. Moving along to Foundation, HWDSB Foundation. Trustee Paikin-Miller.
Yes, the Foundation continues to provide funding to Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board students through its student support grants and has worked with the board to adjust the granting process to accommodate students in remote learning. As always, any staff who have a student who they feel could benefit from a student support grant should reach out to the Foundation staff. So recent donations, the Foundation has received 2 significant donations recently to help fund its student support grant program. The first is from the Canadian Education Exchange Foundation in the amount of $14,500, and an additional $16,500 was received from Johnson Insurance. Student support grants are 100% funded by donors. With the support of incredible donors like these 2, our foundation is able to offer student support grants to ensure students have what they need to come to school and what they need to stay in school. We are so grateful. The signature event is, as usual, as shared in the last update. The Foundation's signature event will move from a traditional in-person gala to a virtual showcase, which will celebrate the artistic talents of Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board students. This event will take place the evening of February the 4th, 2020. Please save the date, as more details will be forthcoming. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will look to trustees on the phone. Is there any questions? Hearing none for trustees in the room. Hearing none, thank you, Trustee Paikin-Miller, for your report. We'll move now along to the OPSBA report. So I can state that I was in attendance at our regional meeting on Saturday. During that discussion, we reviewed GSN priorities and advocacy that OPSBA would be taking on behalf of boards across the province. And we also had a discussion about what was termed underlined red items. So someone, just individuals not with us, but trustees, for those who are on the phone, if you put yourself on hold, all of us hear the hold tone. So if you do need to step away from the meeting, please do not put the meeting on hold, and we'll send a reminder out to trustees. Actually, I'll ask Trustee Officer Miller if you can send out a text to everyone now. Just because it is quite disruptive to try and think through the hold tone. So continuing along, we did have a discussion on what was called underlined red items. So items that we considered to be concerns or significant threats to public education. As part of that discussion, we did highlight that we wanted to, similar to the motion passed here at HWDSB, we are encouraging the government to fund school boards according to projected enrollment and not actual, as well as we had discussions around the need for additional funding to cover supplies and the increased cost of supplies during the time of COVID. As well as we also discussed, there was a big focus on the need to have represented our training across the province on anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism. And we also discussed that there needed to be a focus within the GSNs on ensuring that anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism training, as well as policy development, was included in initiatives, was included in the GSNs. So those were some of the highlights taken away from the discussions this past weekend. In addition, there was legislative report provided. So the government is going through the budget process and is preparing for the spring budget. Announcement was made that the government is lowering the education portion of property tax for industrial ratepayers. That will signify a loss of $450 million. As well, the provincial government has announced that is continuing to provide funding to the tune of $380 million for parents, and that is the $200 per child 12 years old and under that parents can access and apply for funding for. Further, Bill 216 was passed, and that is Food Literacy for Students Act 2020. This would require additional courses on food literacy. Very exciting news is that Bill 172 was sponsored by MPP Kathleen Wynne, and this bill is now proceeding to second reading. A lot of the advocacy on this bill actually originates here in Hamilton and from SEAC's very own Mark Counterpat. So it's wonderful to see that the local voice of Hamilton is being championed at the provincial level. And what Bill 172 does is it requires school boards to develop policies and guidelines regarding FASD, which includes, so that's fetal alcohol syndrome, which includes training for teachers and ECEs. The bill itself is quite detailed, but that's a high-level summary, and we certainly appreciate the voice of Mark Counterpat, as well as the voice of SEAC, which is now being echoed and I would say magnified in the provincial legislature. So with that, that brings forward my report. Is there any questions with regards to the OPSBA report from trustees on the phone? Hearing none, is there any questions from trustees in the room? Hearing and seeing none, that concludes that portion. And at that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Just remember, trustees, that we will be moving straight into standing committee, so don't get off the phone. I'll take a motion to adjourn from Trustee Tutt, seconded by Trustee Bingham. Is anyone voting against? Is anyone voting against the motion to adjourn from those on the phone? Hearing none. Anyone voting against the motion to adjourn from trustees in the room? Hearing none, the motion passes. Please do not go anywhere. We are now going straight into standing committee, and to which Vice Chair Danko will be chairing as per policy. Thank you. Vice Chair.
Thank you, trustees. I'm happy to call the standing committee to order. Just moving to item 2, we do have a written delegation submitted from V. Durjevic regarding the naming of Memorial School. And there are 2 items that were provided to trustees. There is a book that was provided by hard copy that was already distributed, and there's an electronic package that was also printed in the room for trustees who are here in person. Are there any questions or comments, or I guess questions for clarity regarding the delegation at this time? I'm going to start by looking to trustees in the room. Seeing none. On the phone, I'll just go through the list, starting in reverse order. Trustee Tutt. Any questions for clarity?
No questions. No questions. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Paikin-Miller.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Miller.
This is specific to the delegation at the moment, correct?
Correct.
I do not have any questions right now.
Thank you. Trustee Deeth.
No questions. Thank you.
Trustee Bingham.
No questions. Thank you.
And Trustee Archer.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move along to item
Trustee Archer.
Left.
I'll move along to item, sorry, one moment. I'll also note that there are 2 letters also in our delegation package. Let's see, one is from MP Bob Bertina, and the other is from MPP Paul Miller. And I'll just, again, turn to trustees. Are there any questions for clarification regarding those 2 items? Looking to trustees in the room. Trustee Galindo.
Thank you, Trustee Danko. Just a question for staff. I'm not sure if staff is able to provide some clarification. I'm trying to understand this Nikola Tesla Educational Corporation. My understanding is that this isn't the first time that they've submitted delegations to our board with regards to naming processes for schools. But in their delegation, they don't provide a lot of information about the organization itself. It literally just says, we are like no other organization, we deliver, we are a registered charity. So I'm wondering if staff, if they do great, if they're able to provide some clarification on what this organization does, where does their funding come from, when was it established, that type of thing. It might be an unfair question, but I'm curious if staff might be able to provide some clarification on that.
I'll turn to the director to see if we do have that information. We could also go back to the delegate to seek clarification for response at a future meeting. Director Figueiredo?
So thank you through the chair. I don't have specifics about the organization. I do know, yes, they did provide a delegation when we were naming Bernie Cussa Secondary School, and also through our community engagement and partnership. And they did work through our partnership to provide potential resources to our schools around for science connected to Nicholas Tesla. So, but other than specifics about the organization, I do not have that.
Thank you, Director. Trustee Galindo, do you have a follow-up?
Actually, yeah, maybe we can get some clarification on the extent of our relationship with the organization from a community relationship standpoint.
Thank you. And just noting this is for clarification to the delegation specifically.
Correct.
Thank you. So I guess we can ask staff to report back to the director. Seeing head nods, yes, thank you. And I will just go and do a call out for trustees on the phone with the addition of those two additional letters that are in our delegation package. Are there any questions regarding those two letters? I'm going to ask trustees just to unmute yourself if you have a question. Hearing none. Now we'll move along.
Sorry, Dawn. Sorry.
Go ahead, Trustee Dees.
Trustee Miller.
Oh, Trustee Miller, go ahead.
Sorry, my apologies for interrupting. I do actually, sort of in the same vein as Trustee Galindo, I am curious as to where this organization is coming from, but also why the support specifically for this name from, two members of both, one from provincial parliament and one from the federal parliament. That is a bit of a big question mark, particularly because there was a local school naming committee that has already done work around this issue. So I do think it's a fair, I guess perhaps more of a comment on my part, but I share similar curiosity around the organizational structure behind this delegation. Sorry, that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. So I will note that we can receive delegations from anyone from the community, and certainly we're interested in getting an update or a report back on our partnership with this corporation and further details for clarification, but we really can't question the intent of a delegation aside from what they have provided in their delegation. With that, I would like to move along to item 3, approval of the agenda. So looking for a trustee in the room to move the agenda. Trustee Buck, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Galindo, thank you. At this point, are there any, is there any comments or questions regarding the agenda? Seeing none in the room. On the phone, I'll just allow you to unmute yourself. Are there any questions around the agenda? Hearing none, I'll turn to those on the phone. Is there anyone voting against approving the agenda? And in the room, anyone voting against approving the agenda? So seeing and hearing none, the agenda is approved. Item 4, are there any declarations of conflict of interest for this meeting? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. We'll move along to item number 5. This is reports from staff. Our first item is the naming committee report for Memorial Stoney Creek, and I will turn to the director to introduce the report.
So thank you through the chair. Trustees will see a report around naming of the new school on Memorial Stoney Creek site. There's a recommended action there. I will ask Superintendent Jeff Gillies, who was participating this evening remotely, if he could walk the Board of Trustees through the report and the process followed as per policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Gillies. And trustees, you'll find the report on 5-1.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees. And through the chair, as was said, I'll refer trustees to report number 5, requesting consideration of 3 submissions by the School Naming Advisory Committee for the new elementary school being built currently at the Memorial Stoney Creek site. The recommended names in unranked alphabetical order from the naming committee are Achievement, Battlefield Stoney Creek, and South Meadow. In accordance with HWDSB terms of reference, the School Naming Advisory Committee met virtually on October 13th to scrutinize the names submitted through the public consultation and recommend up to 3 names for trustee consideration. According to HWDSB's naming policy, the naming of school process will begin at the closure of 2 or more schools and consolidation into a new build on an existing site or a new site. As part of the Lower Stoney Creek accommodation review, the Board of Trustees approved the closure of Memorial, Stoney Creek, and Mountain View, pending Ministry of Education funding for a new school on the Memorial Stoney Creek site. The new school is scheduled to open for students on January 4th, 2021. Names for the new school were solicited from stakeholders through a public consultation process. The consultation survey was posted from January 14th to February 28th, and for the new school at Memorial, 40 names were suggested. I'd like to thank all members of the School Naming Advisory Committee listed within the report, including Area Trustee and Co-Chair Cam Galindo, as well as Trustee Maria Felix Miller, parents, staff, and students from both Memorial and Mountain View. Included with this report, trustees will see Appendix A, which provides a description of the names that were brought forward through the public consultation. And that description is provided through the Hamilton Public Library. Also, I'll refer trustees to Appendix C, and that provides a summary of public consultation results for both new schools at Greensville and Memorial. The following names are presented, once again in alphabetical order for consideration. The naming committee believes all names uphold the guiding principles for the naming of HWDSB schools. And once again, the three names are achievement and a brief description, that being something accomplished, especially by superior ability, special effort, or great courage. Battlefield Stoney Creek, and that is in reference to the Battle of Stoney Creek, connected to the National Historical Site of Canada, which is a memorial park built on the site of a battlefield from the War of 1812. And finally, South Meadow. South Meadow is a neighborhood in Stoney Creek that is bordered by Queenston Road, Millen Road, the Niagara Escarpment, and Green Road. And that is my report.
Thank you, Superintendent Gillies. At this time, I'd like to turn to the co-chair of the committee and the ward trustee, Trustee Galindo. Do you have any further comments? And would you like to make a motion for a particular name for the new school?
Yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate Superintendent Gillies bringing forward that report. At this time, I would like to bring forward a motion to name the new school on the Memorial Stoney Creek site, South Meadow Elementary School. And I believe it was Trustee Felix Miller, or Trustee Miller, that was going to second that motion.
Thank you. I was just going to look for a seconder. Trustee Miller, would that be acceptable for you to second the motion?
Yes, I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. At this time, I will turn to Trustee Galindo to speak to his motion, and I'll go through and provide trustees with an opportunity to ask questions or comments on the motion.
Thank you. It's my honor to present to my colleagues what is now my third school naming recommendation for a school in the Stoney Creek neighborhood. So I'm happy to be here with that. As you saw in Superintendent Gillies' report, there are three recommendations that the school naming committee came to, now one of them being South Meadow Elementary School. I do want to quickly talk about the process that we went through with selecting these names. As the superintendent mentioned, we did go through a public consultation process earlier this year through January and February, where we sought feedback on the potential name for the new school.
Carol Paikin Miller.
And that is pretty much standard procedure, and we've gone through that process multiple times for all other schools. In my case, this is the third time that I've gone through this process. The first time was with Shannon Coustashen, the second time was with Eastdale, and now this new school to replace the old Memorial Stoney Creek. Following the survey results, our intention was to have the school naming process take place in the spring, but because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, we were forced to delay the naming process until this fall. And the committee met last month via Zoom, and I have to say it was probably one of the most organized, I think, processes that I've gone through with a school naming. I think Zoom might have helped with that, and it was quite efficient, I must say. So I'm very happy with the process. In terms of the composition of that naming committee, I just want to highlight that we had parents, multiple parents from both school communities that are being consolidated. We had representatives from each school, from the school councils. We had staff from both schools, so not just administration, but also teachers present at the school naming committee. We had representatives from the Home and School Association. We also had student representatives, and of course, this is my favorite part of the process, which is the importance of student voice and student representation at the decision-making table, and that played a big role with the Shannon Kustashian selection at the other school, so I'm happy with that. And then we also had community representatives. So my point being, although I was at the naming committee and so were staff, and thank you to Trustee Miller for being there as well as the second trustee rep, we ourselves were not voting members. The community that made up the naming committee were voting members, and they're the ones that went through the process of going through all the names that were recommended in the school naming survey that was conducted earlier that year, and they're the ones that that delegated what their priorities were, what their values were when it came to selecting a name that they were proposing for the school, and that's how they came to those three names. Now, although this is my third time going through the process, this is only the second time that I've received a significant stack of papers with a delegation suggesting a name other than the one that I'm bringing forward in my motion. So I do want to speak to that very quickly. Nikola Tesla was a name that was submitted through the survey process. It received the most number of recommendations through the survey that was sent out to the entire city of Hamilton. The committee did seriously consider the name Nikola Tesla, but ultimately, speaking for myself as a non-voting member, not only did I help facilitate the process, but I was also there making observations, and I took detailed notes of the meeting. There were a few concerns that community representatives had with the name Nikola Tesla, and ultimately is the reason that it didn't go past the top 5. Nikola Tesla was in the top 5 of their selection process, but ultimately they decided not to move ahead with it as one of the 3 recommendations. One of the reasons was the committee recognized that this wasn't the first time that the name was being brought forward as a school name, and with that, they felt that there really wasn't a way of guaranteeing that the number of respondents to the survey were from the Stoney Creek community, because the survey, really anyone, anywhere could have voted and submitted recommendations for the name Nikola Tesla on the survey. So the committee felt that, that didn't carry as much weight as the thoughts and opinions of the community members that were present at the meeting. So that's one reason. The second reason being the committee wanted to move away from using names in general for a new school. They were hoping to select a name that either paid tribute to the community as a whole or something that didn't carry the weight of an individual. A third reason that they didn't want to consider Nikola Tesla was they felt that there wasn't a strong enough community connection specific to Stoney Creek as much as the other names that were being proposed in the report. And the fourth reason that I have written down is that there was already a road that was renamed after Nikola Tesla in 2016. Burlington Boulevard, I think it was named, or Burlington Street was renamed Nikola Tesla. Anyhow, so those are my observations. I'm happy to answer any further questions, but I should clarify that the name that I'm bringing forward, South Meadow, is the name of a neighborhood, the neighborhood that the school belongs in. That is all.
Thank you, Trustee Galindo. Trustee Miller, would you like to speak to the motion? And you, of course, can make comments or ask questions.
Thank you so much. Yes. So Trustee Galindo captured, I believe, the work of the committee and the sentiment of their participants really, really eloquently just now. Very much there was that sense on that call, and thank you so much to Superintendent Gillies. He led the discussion with a real warmth and a real understanding of where the community members were coming from, and was very respectful and very good at navigating the variety of discussion that happened that night. So I do want to provide a bit of a deeper context on maybe some of the other choices here. Trustee Galindo is absolutely correct that the name Nikola Tesla did come up. We did discuss it. I believe it was a member from our communications team who did highlight that this name has appeared and often appears with very many votes behind it. There does seem to be I don't want to term it a lobbying around this name, but there doesn't seem to be another word for it. So as much as we respect the work of that portion of the community, there was a sense that night that the community members present at that committee did not necessarily feel that Nikola Tesla was an appropriate name for that area in Stoney Creek and for a new school. I think community members voiced very much that they wanted a name that united both school communities, former school communities, didn't pick one area over another, or didn't give more importance to one of the communities. Achievement was discussed very much. It felt very promising and kind of future forward looking. Battlefield Stoney Creek, while certain community members felt that it highlighted sort of the historical military importance of Stoney Creek, there was discussion around, in the future, does this have a potential for it to acquire a negative connotation at the community level, like the idea of, you're sending your kids to battle at, the elementary school, or any kind of, less than ideal symbolism. So I will say those discussions were very well thought out from community members. We wanted very much to be respectful and have a name that is, elegant and positive and can really kind of unite both communities. And I will say that South Meadow is one that feels that it can do all of those things while still being very specifically connected to the community itself. And I don't have any questions, but that's the reason that I'm supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. So I will go to trustees on the line in reverse order, I'll go in our regular order to start. So Trustee Archer, do you have any comments or questions to the motion? Trustee Archer?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
I'm very much in favor of the motion, as I do believe greatly in the policy, the procedure, and when we do strike a committee for the naming of the schools, they do know their community best, so I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Trustee Bingham. Trustee Deeth?
I don't have a problem with South Meadow. It makes sense. It's the community and it's a safe name. I'm just wondering, though, in looking at the summary of findings for the naming, Sarah Calder, there was 15 for her, and I'm just wondering why that name was rejected.
I'll turn to the director and perhaps Superintendent Gillies for a response.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if Superintendent Gillies has any insight on that name through the discussions at the advisory committee.
Thank you, Director, and through the chair. Yes, through the process that the committee followed, Sarah Calder was identified as is indicated on the report, as having several recommendations coming forward through the public consultation, and was considered throughout the process. However, the process that was followed really was narrowing down names that the committee felt most strongly about. So as that narrowing process took place, Sarah Calder at a certain point in time was no longer considered a top choice by the committee. I hope that answers the question, Trustee Deeth.
Thank you. And Trustee Galindo had something to add. Go ahead, Trustee Galindo.
Yes, thank you. To answer the question as well, the members of the school naming committee was moving away from wanting to name the school after individuals and was looking to choose names that were not named after people, quite frankly.
Thank you. Trustee Deeth?
And I'm just wondering, too, do we, I know it's the process that we follow and through it, and I'm just wondering, do we know, I know there's a couple of students that sit on the naming committee, but do we have a broader sense from the student body in regards to the South Meadow name?
To the director?
So again, I'd ask Superintendent Gillies if he has insights to the students who participated and the voices they brought from their school.
Thank you through the chair, and I'll offer my thoughts, and as co-chair, Trustee Galindo may have some thoughts around that. As is often the case, our student participants really add great value to the discussions taking place, and are equal members within the committee. So, Trustee Deeth, I don't believe we have anything specific where we saw a trend from our students. Each of them really, as I recall, and Trustee Galindo, feel free to share your thoughts, they really had different views on the names that were being discussed throughout the process. So I wouldn't say we felt strongly that our student groupings really were looking for one particular name. They had their own, just like many of the members on the committee that they really believed should be considered.
Thank you. And Trustee Galindo, something to add?
Yes, thank you. Just to echo the comments that Trustee or that Superintendent Gillies made, I don't personally recall how the student representatives were voting or which names they were supporting. That being said, they were very involved in the process. I will say that, and just like all the other voting members, they would have influenced the outcome that we're seeing here tonight. So I'm happy with their participation. Thankful that they were involved in the process, but I'm not able to recall exactly what names they were supporting.
Thank you, Trustee Deeth.
I just feel, obviously the student voice is important in this, and it would be just nice to know, I think, before we made the final decision to support South Meadow, that the students were representing, students at that table were on board with the name.
Thank you, Trustee Deeth. And did you have any further questions, or did you want a response to that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any, I know a decision, we want to make a decision tonight, but I'm just wondering whether there is an option just to go back and just get just a confirmation that the students are on board with this new name.
So I will comment that we do have a policy that was followed, and going back to the student population is not part of that policy. And I'll also remind trustees that tonight we will ideally have a recommended action, and that motion will be passed, but this will be ratified at the next board meeting. So I'll go to the director. Is there an opportunity to seek some feedback, whether that's formal or informal, from the student body by that time?
So thank you through the chair. I think the chair captured it. Is there always an opportunity? Yes. But as through the policy, the students are members and would have had to come to consensus with those three names being provided. If there's the direction to just sort of loop back with the two student trustees between standing committee and board, Superintendent Gillies can do so, but I think what's clear is the process is being followed as per the policy.
Trustee Deeth?
Yeah, I'm not denying that or arguing that the process wasn't followed. I think just, it would be nice to be able to get the, before this is ratified at board, just to get that feedback. Is that, can I ask that, or can we ask that to happen?
I believe the director said informally the superintendent can talk to the student trustee representatives from the committee. Anything beyond that would require a board motion. Trustee Deeth, would that be acceptable to hear back some feedback from the student members of the committee?
Yes, that would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Trustee Archer does have a few questions. I will loop back to Trustee Archer. At this time, I'll just keep going down the list. Trustee Paikin-Miller. Trustee Paikin-Miller. And one more time, Trustee Carol Paikin-Miller. So I believe we've lost her on the line.
Joined.
Trustee Tutt, did you have any comments or questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just loop back. Trustee Archer, you indicated you had a question.
Yes, I did. Sorry, I was trying to put together my questions. Was there consideration of combining the two names, the Meadows and the Battlefield of Stoney Creek, which is Crick? Was it because there would be confusion of the name? When I think of Meadows, that was all farmland, fruit land, and Meadows to me means meadows, flowers, rolling things like that. So I'm a little confused on the naming.
Thank you, and I am seeing Trustee Galindo signal as co-chair. He can respond, and I'll note that we've heard that the name of the neighborhood that where this school is being built is called South Meadows, as we have names for different neighborhoods. But Trustee Galindo, can you provide comment?
Sure, yeah. The community selected that one as one of their 3 recommendations because, like Don mentioned, or Trustee Danko mentioned, it's the name of the neighborhood. And it was very neutral, is what the community liked. With regards to combining options, it feels like the committee tried almost every computation and calculation for combining Battlefield Stoney Creek and Memorial Stoney Creek and Mountain View Stoney Creek or Mountain View Memorial. Those were some of the ones that, only because the committee wanted to keep the memorial name or the Battlefield name because it has strong ties to the community. The reason that I'm not bringing that forward as a recommendation is because parents can just use Battlefield as a short form, and there's something that doesn't sound great about saying, I'm sending my kid to the battlefield as a school. So South Meadow being the name of the neighborhood is the reason that it's being proposed tonight.
Thank you. Trustee Archer?
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll turn to trustees in the room. Are there any comments or questions? I'll go to Trustee Johnstone.
Thank you. I will certainly be supporting the area trustees' recommendation for South Meadow for a couple different reasons, but the main one that noting that that alternate names, particularly Nikola Tesla, was brought forward. I am in support of moving towards not naming schools after individuals. Over time, information emerges, politics and what's acceptable changes, and I think that when we're in the practice of naming schools after individuals, we risk having to change that later on down the road. I think that while Battlefield is a significant an historic mark in the local community. I would agree that naming a elementary school battlefield does not, I would say, does not bring about the right, I think, feelings of community that we're looking to foster. Finally, recognizing that South Meadow is a geographical location. It is a name that was championed by the local community, and as well it's a name that our advisory committee, or one of the three names that the advisory committee did land on. So this is turning to the local trustee who does have intimate knowledge of the community, and as a resident of the community, I trust that this is a name that will bring inspiration and pride to the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnstone. Student Trustee Hessler.
Thank you, and through the chair, I am very happy to hear that students were consulted. So that is extremely important to me as well. However, in the future, I would like to see a little bit more student engagement surrounding the naming of schools. And this is just because students who make up a very large population of the people who will be attending these schools. And I am fully in support of the motion.
Thank you. And I'll turn to the director. Do we know when the naming of schools policy will be up for review? And that would be where we could possibly make some amendments.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll look at either Associate Director Peter Sovereign or Trustee Heather Miller. We'll look at that and provide an update to trustees of when that policy is up for review, or and get back to you. Unless Trustee Officer has information right now, I can see her.
Thank you. And through the chair, I think it may be later this year, or it's scheduled for early next academic year.
Thank you. So perhaps we can take a note of the feedback from our student trustee. Any other questions or comments in the room? Okay, seeing none, I will turn back to the mover for final remarks. If you have any, Trustee Galindo.
No, I think I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Thank you. So to the motion to name the new Stoney Creek School South Meadow. Again, this will be a recommended action that will go to our next board meeting and be ratified. Is there anyone opposing the motion? So I'll start within the room. Seeing none. On the line, is anyone opposing this motion? Hearing none, and I'll note that Trustee Paikin-Miller was not on the line. Trustee Paikin-Miller, can I check if you're on the line now? Okay, so with Trustee Paikin-Miller out of our virtual room. Thank you. So the motion passes, and thank you to staff and to our co-chair and our other trustee on the advisory committee for bringing that forward. Next, we'll turn to item number 6, and this is another naming committee report for Greensville. And Trustee Tutt has signaled that he may have to leave shortly. So I'll turn quickly to the director to introduce the report. I'm just going to turn to Trustee Tutt. Would you like to speak before we go to our superintendent to bring forward the report? I just want to respect that you have some time limitations tonight.
Thank you, Chair Danko, and thank you to everyone. I'll make my comments and my remarks brief. Just to start off, I want to thank Superintendent McPherson. I know she's going to be making some comments, but watching her work throughout this process has been inspiring, and my hat's off to her, to the good work she's been doing. As well, I want to thank the naming committee, all the members a part of that, from the parents to the educators, everybody involved. The community has waited quite a bit of time for this moment, and it's here, and they've gone through the process, and I know that it's long overdue, and everyone's excited. I'll also just quickly say that the name that comes forward, I'm going to be in full support of that name. It's the name that the community overwhelmingly supports. It's a name that parents, students, I'm sure past parents and past students, educators will all identify with. And that name pretty much will be Greensville Public School. And that name is pretty much a part of the heritage and history of the school community, of the geographic location. So it's only fitting that I'm hoping trustees will eventually support that choice, and it's only fitting that we support this school community's choice. Thank you, Chair Danko.
Thank you, Trustee Tutt. So we got a sneak peek into the report. I'll turn it over to the director to introduce the report itself.
So thank you. I'll pass over to Jay McPherson, Superintendent of the school, and the report's on 6-1. And just like the previous report, it is a recommended action following the naming of a school or whole in part policy. So Superintendent McPherson, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. Once again, we'll refer trustees to report number 6. In June 2014, trustees approved the closure of Greensville and Spencer Valley and the construction of a new school on the Greensville school site. This new JK-8 school is part of a joint community project that includes a City of Hamilton Community Center and a Hamilton Public Library location. The new elementary school at the Greensville site is currently under construction, and completion is expected for the new school opening January 2021. As part of the HWDSB school naming process, HWDSB solicited suggestions for names of the new elementary school at the Greensville site in Hamilton from stakeholder groups through a public consultation process from January 14th to February 28th, 2020. 228 responses were received online and by email and mail. In total, 33 names were put forward for consideration. A school naming advisory committee was formed and met virtually on October 14th, 2020 to discuss and consider the public consultation report and all names suggested. Committee members were tasked with distilling the names down to 3 names that meet HWDSB guiding principles and have community acceptance while being appropriate for the whole district. The committee used several rounds of voting to come to consensus for the 3 recommendations to be considered by trustees. Recommended names, unranked and in alphabetical order, are Crooks Hollow, Greensville, and Webster's Falls. The Hamilton Public Library researched each of these names, and a summary for each name can be found in the executive report to the board. Offering a brief description of each of these 3 names, I'll read as follows. Crooks Hollow. Crooks Hollow is situated on Spencer Creek to the west of present-day Greensville. While today the former community of Crooks Hollow is a ghost town, the name has lived on as a conservation area that offers a quiet retreat on Spencer Creek. Greensville. The community of Greensville is situated on the banks of Spencer Creek and is named for the Green family. In 1884, a community school section number 5 was built to replace a 2-room frame schoolhouse erected in 1848. In 1889, the school trustees purchased an iron bell, which continued to be used until the 1950s when an electric bell system was installed. And of note, we, in our archives department, do have this bell. In 1998, the Greensville School celebrated its 150th anniversary. Webster's Falls. Located on the southern edge of Greensville in the Spencer Gorge Conservation Area, Webster's Falls is the region's largest waterfall and has been a popular destination throughout the history of the area. The area is now owned and managed by the Hamilton Conservation Authority as part of the Spencer Gorge Conservation Area. And this concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. So I'm just seeing from Trustee Tutt, he can possibly stick around for our discussion and would like to move an action item. Trustee Tutt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Danko. I'd like to move the name Greensville Public School. for a vote.
Thank you. And I've got Trustee Johnstone as a seconder. Trustee Tutt, if you'd like to speak to the motion.
I kind of made my remarks early on. I'll just touch on the fact that I'll just touch on the fact that if you go through the report, you'll see that Greensville Public School was the one that really came out on top. And this is a school community that really took their time and went through the process to come forward with this name. And you know, I say it's a bit of a no-brainer because I know some of you trustees already know a bit of the history and the heritage of the area, but the community really does align themselves with that name, and they take it quite serious. And I think there's overwhelming support for that name, Greensville Public School, and hence why you see that name coming out on top. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Tutt. Trustee Johnstone, as a seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, and just to offer clarification, although the community residents put forward the name Greensville Public, our policy now is Greensville Elementary, so it's we call a school by elementary rather than public school now. So I'll just provide that quick clarification. But I am full-heartedly supporting this motion. Both Trustee Tutt and myself participated in the review, and we have both received communications from community residents, from community organizations. There was a very strong community support to maintain the Greensville name. And as trustees will note, that in 1998, Greensville celebrated its 150th anniversary. This is a long-standing name. I do want to note that there was also support for Crooks Hollow as well as Webster Falls. I think it's worth noting that the names that have come forward are largely individuals who were able to purchase land back in the day. And it brings to mind that many of our communities are likely named after individuals who were able to purchase land at some point or another. And for that reason, many other individuals would be excluded from the naming process. That being said, Greensville is the official name of the community and has been for many, many years. And for that reason, I do support utilizing the Greensville name as it was named after a family. And it is a geographical area and the official name thereof. So with that, I do support the recommendation, and I do support the community's opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnstone. So I'll start in the room to see if there are any questions or comments, and then I'll go on the line in reverse order. Trustee Galindo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at the names that were being considered based on the consultation, I mean, as much as I'd love to support Greg Van Heffen, who is Trustee Tutt's predecessor for the naming process, I'm also seeing Nikola Tesla, so I'm wondering if the area trustee or the superintendent could speak to why that name wasn't selected as one of the top 3 options.
I'll go through the director to Superintendent McPherson.
Thank you, and through the chair. To my recollection, the name Nikola Tesla did not garner any votes in any of the rounds. So none of the committee members voted for that.
Thank you, Trustee Galindo.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Student Trustee Hessler.
Thank you, and through the chair. Could you speak a little bit more towards specifically what the students voted for? I see that there are 2 students that are listed in the naming advisory committee.
To the director.
Thank you, and through the chair. My recollection from the voting that took place, it was unanimous for all 3 names that were put forward. I can tell you that each of the student trustees, one of them spoke strongly toward Greensville and the other spoke strongly to Webster's Falls.
Thank you. That would be the student committee members, right? Correct. Okay.
That's correct.
Follow-up questions, student trustee Hessler?
No further questions.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments in the room? Seeing none, I'll go to those on the line. So trustee Tutt's already spoken. Just checking, trustee Pakin-Miller, are you back with us? No? Okay. And trustee Miller?
No questions. Just want to say that I'm in support of the motion.
Thank you. Trustee Deeth?
Thank you. And I'm happy and excited and in full support of Greensville continuing to be the name. I know that the community, I know the Mill Grove community are in full support of it maintaining the Greensville name. I would like to say that I also saw with former trustee Greg Van Geffen's name come forward, and it was nice of the community to recognize Greg and all the work that went into this, but I am in full support of the Greensville name. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
I'm also in support of the Greensville name. My only concern is not around naming it, giving that name, but if we, in our policy, need to be putting Greensville Elementary, should we not be putting that out there just to get an idea from the community how they feel about that? Because they're kind of assuming tonight that we'd be calling it Greensville Public School. That's my only kind of concern over it, although our policy is elementary. I really feel the community needs to know that before we actually put this more than anything. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go through the director to Superintendent McPherson to provide any clarity. Was the committee aware that it would be Greensville Elementary?
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, it was clarified with the committee that it would be Greensville Elementary, as that is our board's procedures, and they were in full support.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
That's great. That's what I wanted to make sure of, because you don't want to surprise them last second with anything like that. So yes, I'll be totally in favor of Greensville Elementary School.
Thank you. Trustee Archer?
I 100% support the name of the school. As a former school bus driver, I like the name. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will turn to the mover for final remarks. Trustee Tutt?
Thank you, Chair Danko. I have no remarks to make.
Okay, so on the motion to rename or name the new school on the Greensville site, Greensville Elementary, is anyone opposed? I'll look in the room. Seeing none, on the line, is anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, and I'm glad you could stay on the line, Trustee Tutt. Thank you to staff, the committee members for the school renaming, as well as the trustees who helped co-chair that. We'll move along then to item number 7. That is our effective communication report. I'll turn it to the director to introduce the report.
So thank you. As Senior Manager Sean McKillop comes up to get the slide deck ready, I'd like to draw the trustees' attention to page 7-1. So this is the first report this school year around our strategic direction priorities, and one of them is effective communication. Trustees can see in the summary report, it includes several items. The implementation status of our annual plan for 1920, and the draft strategies for the 2021 annual plan. Again, we're still working through it this fall. Also, some appendices that show some of the tools like effective communication roadmap, and Appendix B, some of the highlights from last year. But also I think you need to ground it again when effective communication was a priority sought out by the board, there was a communication audit that grounded this work from the National School of Public Relations Association. And then from that, Manager Sean McKillop and his team developed the strategic communications and engagement plan. Before I pass it over to him to walk through, we had a target of implementing year 2 of the strategic communications engagement plan. We have met some elements of that, but last year was a difficult year, as trustees know. We still, and how important communication is and will continue to be, especially under a pandemic. But we were paused by the work of provincial labor actions that did distract us from this work and had our team focus in other areas during the long provincial labor sanctions, which we eventually did get through. But then March to June, again with the school closure and pandemic, the work of the team shifted their communications in a very digital format with a focus with our community around re-engaging, distance learning, and getting our plan up and running. So I'll pass over to Manager Sean McKillop to go through a slide deck that will highlight some of our successes and some of our areas of focus as we move forward for the 2021 school year. So through you, Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Director Figueredo, and through the chair. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again. I always find that this is a culminating moment for me in the year, and to be able to present this overview is actually quite a pleasure for me, so thank you. Before I begin, I wanted to thank my team so much. I don't think that we could have gone through this year without them. And I also wanted to extend my support or thank you and gratitude to the director for all the support that he's shown me this year in particular. As we ground ourselves in the strategic plan, this is where we begin the conversation, and this is where effective communication lives. I'm also partially responsible for partnerships as well, but we will be talking about that through another structure of the board through program. It is great to see that as an organization, you do have effective communications as part of your commitment to the district and to our families. As the director mentioned, we did a communication audit with the National School Public Relations Association, and I was pleased to come on board to provide in the first year a strategic communications and engagement plan. I must say that having a plan really helps ground us when we do find ourselves in moments of straying away from certain aspects, when we're pulled into issues or other priorities. This plan actually has, a great, it just gives us a great place to go back to be able to provide that guidance for us to move forward with the school board. Inside the plan, we talk about a vision, and the vision is to honor all voices. And I think it's only important this year, as well as all years, to emphasize that we have an increased focus and an intentionality on the racialized, marginalized, and equity-seeking groups within our community. So our vision honoring all voices, that particular area is something that our department and our organization is working to uphold. This plan is also based on the fundamental principles of trust, relationships, and to build confidence. And we continue to create a culture of communications here at the board. And I know we often talk about that being a shared effort. There are 5 priority areas, and you can see them on the slide here. Leadership, staff ambassadors, which is essentially internal communications, digital engagement, student outreach, and partnerships. It's about building and maintaining mutually beneficial relationships between us and our many audiences. So our overall objectives, we want to know, do our leaders have what they need to be effective? Do staff know where to find the information to do their jobs? Do parents engage with us through online opportunities? Do students feel connected and engaged in school life? And do partners feel engaged and valued while working with us? I'll direct your attention to Appendix A. I'll shift past the report just quickly. This is where we look at how we come to building our plan and the connection between the board annual plan and the strategic communications and engagement plan. As you can see, we do a little crossover, but lot of the areas that are in there are pulled out based on priority, based on need, and based on system resources that we need to draw our attention to. And of course, at the very bottom, our effort is always looking at evaluation. So these are the strategies that we have for the 2019 school year. What a year it's been. Reflecting on the strategies, I don't think that we knew we'd have the kind of year that we have had. The pandemic has accelerated our work, and in some cases, it has delayed much of our work as well. So tonight I'll be going through the strategies, standardizing our digital platforms, implementing an employee ambassador strategy, and looking at digital storytelling. So if I point to page 7.2, this is the start of the Effective Communications report. You can follow along in that report. Standardized platforms became the focus during the pandemic, and we adopted a consistent approach using MS Teams and the Hub, for example. In January of that year, however, before the pandemic started, there was a direction from the senior team and a commitment to standardize the platforms. And as we saw through distance learning and through the ministerial closure, we were quite grateful that that direction had already been mobilized, because it helped us throughout that closure and to bring that distance learning and that connection with our families. We're moving closer to find clarity in our platforms, but it is going to still take another year to do it well. We're in a position now to move from that narrative of the digital platforms to actually delivering the messages, communicating our messages, and obviously using these platforms for learning, which is in progress already. As directions and decisions have changed, we need to hone in on the platforms that will help us, will help not only us, our administrators and the educators to communicate with students, parents, and staff. Over the next year, we will be looking at people, platforms, and topics. So who are we communicating to? How are we communicating with them, i.e. the platform that they use, and what topics will we be able to guarantee that they will be able to be informed about? So this year, we're using the Principals Communication Advisory Group, the HWPC, to guide our work. We will be looking at standardizing the communications experience for a parent or guardian to ensure that they know the minimum standard of communication from grade to grade and school to school. And I know that that will be something that we'll be working with the Parent Involvement Committee on as well. This work goes beyond our connection with parents. It will certainly benefit and impact our staff as well. One of the great pieces that emerged through the pandemic was supporting, when we talk about digital engagement, there were 4 areas. And one of those areas is feedback. And what a real treat it was to have Thought Exchange. Thought Exchange emerged, and this really provides that opportunity for us as a school board to provide and exchange feedback with many audiences that we have. I highlight the one that we did in the spring, and it was quite successful. I think a lot of people wanted to participate. It was a new tool. And I know that we have a lot that we can learn from it and build from as we communicate new surveys and also new exchanges, as they're called, because they're not technically surveys. But it's a real great opportunity to sort of test and to see where our communities, our different audiences are at. The other area that emerged that, even today we hear that we're communicating either too much or too little. I was listening to the press conference, many COVID press conferences, and the reporters were talking to Dr. Williamson and Dr. Yaffe that people are just tuning out of COVID-19 messaging. And, I know that there's a real feeling and sentiment that there is communication overload right now, and certainly COVID fatigue. And so when we hear from our parents and families, we know that we are communicating a lot with them, and one of the areas that we were able to do is to really provide an awareness opportunity for parents to have them customize their school messenger preference. And this is very important because, we hear a lot from parents about, you call me, you email me, you text me, and although it's very important for us to get a hold of them during an emergency, we know that it can be overwhelming, especially if they have multiple children or if there's multiple phone numbers that were provided. So this is something that you're going to see often as a reminder of the customization that we can provide through School Messenger, because we don't want to, we want to have a balance, and we hope to not be intrusive with our families. And for some, at this time, we know that there is a lot of communication happening, and so we want to make sure that we can communicate with them in the way that they want to be communicated. The other highlight I wanted to share, that as part of the digital engagement portfolio and part of standardizing our digital platforms, is the launch of the Parent Portal. And as you know, the Parent Portal was released to the community ahead of schedule and with some significant challenges. I wanted to pause to just say that the essence of that challenge really related to the data, and it's become a great learning opportunity for us as a system. The collaboration between many departments. We've learned from what happened. We've set standards to bring integrity and rules to guide how the data is included. The report details a little bit more rationale in terms of some of the specifics, but at this point, we are very much on top of that concern, and we're really pleased that we have this Parent Portal and we're able to move forward through the year, learning more of the Parent Portal capabilities and being able to really understand it so that our administrators can understand it, so that our parents can have a very clear channel to be able to use for various needs and contact with the school. The next strategy we talk about is the employee ambassador strategy. As I mentioned, this is really our focus on internal communications. When staff are viewed by the organization as ambassadors, they are placed first in the sequence of communication. This year presented challenges to this particular portfolio, but it didn't slow down our commitment to internal communications. The established intranet, for example, that we were able to build, we offered the Quick Finder. We've been really helping support the information flow from administrators through the weekly memos or daily memos, as we're using them so frequently now. And you know, during those moments that we were really feeling those during harder times, we really put internal communications at the forefront of our communication efforts. This year, as I reflect on this report, one of the areas that we wanted to move through was email guidelines. There's a set of tactics that are all part of the internal communications bucket. And we are really excited to be able to move through some of those tactics to be able to build a program that can really help accelerate some of the internal communication pieces. Tomorrow, actually, we're going to Exec Council with our email guidelines, and we're really excited to move through that, because every step we have with a new tactic that can support the internal communications program is going to help our staff communicate, and it's going to, again, provide that clear channel of communications with our staff. So more to come on that. All of this is building towards a customer service program here at the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board. Given the realities that we're facing in this particular priority area, we are going to be delaying that priority and that strategy to the next edition of the Strategic Communications and Engagement Plan. I think that there's a lot of work that we still need to do before we get to that particular place where we can provide a customer service program, but it's certainly top of mind, and all of this work, all of this staff ambassador piece is moving towards that customer service program. We brought this to Executive Council on March 10th, and March 13th came, and that was the closure. So we were very excited to bring forward a digital storytelling strategy. And, you know, it has been a real struggle to rise above some of the negative news that we've been experiencing, not so much just as a board, but just in our community with COVID-19. And I know people are just craving for some of the features to talk about some of the good news stories. This is one of the lessons that we've learned in the pandemic, is that you got to fight for those positive stories. And my team are so excited to be able to move forward with this particular strategy. We're positioned to do that, and we're going to be able to bring together a creative structure. We're calling it a creative team, and it's really a collaboration between multimedia, graphic design, and writing and content writing, to be able to provide more of a focus on positive storytelling. And we're going to do that through looking at students, staff, schools, partners, and programs. It's really important for us to tell those stories and to see some of the great work that's happening so that we can be able to shine a light on this board and to show the great work that's happening in our schools. Now, in the leadership category of the communications plan, this is usually when I'm able to work with the director and find opportunities for different leadership groups in the board to be able to provide some kind of communications leadership opportunity and learning. Because we know that strong leaders are strong communicators, and we want to always look at providing opportunities to raise the bar on our communications leadership. This year, however, we've had, this was a very difficult year, but there were many practical examples and significant experiences that were actually opportunities for us to learn from and to help us grow. In every experience, we have to say, what is this crisis here to teach us? And as our director has said before, a crisis should never be a wasted leadership opportunity. So as we reflect on some of the imagery of the 2019-20 school year, we know that we can and we have learned from it. And this just helps us grow as an organization. So I do think that leadership is still a key component to communications, and we will continue to strive for leadership communications in the new year. Parent leaders are also part of that category. And parent leaders is a category of our parent population that supports school councils, home and school associations, even our volunteers. And this is an area where we feel that we can make a difference to support. And this is support for school councils. We just launched the latest edition of our school council handbook. We had a school council startup session on November the 4th that was quite successful. And we continue to have these school council drop-in visits. And in the last 2 years, we've been able to go visit 6 high school communities, and we invite the high school council as well as the associated schools connected to that high school. And we'll continue to do that because it's important for us to continue to hear the voices of our parents, of our school council members, and find out what they need from us and how best we can communicate with them. I didn't just mention here before I move on, in the report we talk about student outreach. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank the student trustees who are here tonight. We did a lot, we have done more work in the past with student trustees. Of course, last year there were challenges that we were unable to do, but we still were able to do a Take the Lead conference. And that was a wonderful opportunity for us, and I do look forward to working with student trustees again this year, because that's very significant to reaching our students and to hear how they can inform our communication. So I really look forward to that. We also have the student advisory groups that they're a fluid group of students that we can go and ask how communication is being handled and getting feedback from different student groups to improve our communication messages so that they resonate. And just to highlight some of the key areas, so we talk about our Safe Schools, bullying prevention and intervention Safe Schools panel. We supported the panel and the communications and engagement outreach to some of the groups. We were pleased to see some of the attendance. We had a member attend each event, and we were really pleased with some of the turnout that we were able to do. This is Appendix B7, page 7-9 now. And we were also just looking at continuing the support for the Safe Schools panel and as they implement and provide the final report. When we started the school opening, this is another area that we wanted to highlight because it was very significant when we talk about the information that was coming to us. We took some time to provide a specific school reopening safety campaign because there was a lot of anxiety that was in the community as we were approaching the start of the school year. And we wanted to support it with a communications campaign that provided some key messaging on not only safety, but also just that idea that we are here, we are caring, for our community. We want to provide that assurance as best as we can that students are coming and staff are coming into safe environments using the public health measure precautions. So we were using the hashtag HWDSB cares. We were looking at buying social media advertisements, which was a great learning for us. And as you can see, some of the stats that we have here reached a lot of individuals, and we certainly know that the school social media budget for advertising is much lower than, say, print. So this is an area that we know has great reach and great potential for us to explore. The last slide, well, 2 slides left, but this slide, I just wanted to point out the analytics. This is Appendix C. And just in particular, I wanted to highlight the website. And, you know, when you reflect on that line each year, I think before we've commented on spikes in snow days, you can really tell when there's certain interest at certain times of the year. And I look at this year and I can see exactly when we closed. And March had a peak in the middle of the bar, in the middle screen there. And then it's very interesting to see it taper down a little bit. We had 26% new users go to our website during this whole time. And so we reflect on the sort of slight decline in people going to our website. But then it picks up in June, which is a key time for us because that's when we announced, or Minister Lecce announced, the school reopening plans. It dropped down in September, and then as you can see, August, that's really the parent portal and the survey and that reintegration back into the school reopening conversation. So it's interesting when you do look at the data, you can kind of reflect on where we've been. But we're pleased to see that the number of users were definitely, we saw an increase of users to our website. So in conclusion, this is the draft 2020-21 strategies that we're looking forward to implement. We're going to continue to complete year 2 of the plan. We're going to look at really focusing in on the parent portal, standardizing our communications and platforms, and really telling the great stories that we have here in HWDSB. I'm really re-energized talking about this. It's so nice to be able to talk strategically, as refreshing as it is, and it's not specifically COVID. But this is really where our passion is in terms of the communications department, and we would really look forward to implementing and making this these strategies come to life. So thank you so much. At this time, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much for bringing forward the report, and to Manager McKillop and your entire team, thank you for the work you've done over the past year. I know it's been an exceptional year, not necessarily in a good way, but you've been working hard through that. I'll turn to trustees for questions to the report. I'll start with our trustees on the line, and I know that Trustee Tutt had to leave and Trustee Paikin-Miller is not with us. Going from in alphabetical order this time, Trustee Archer, do you have any questions on the report?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
No questions, but thank you for that report. That was excellent to be able to be caught up to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bingham. Trustee Deeth?
Thank you. Just a question in regards to our school councils. As we know, quite a few of our school council chairs have their own social media, I think generally a lot of them have their own Facebook sites. So I'm just wondering, in part of this strategy, is it possible to send out social media posts to the school council chairs, or is that something we've done or are planning on doing?
Manager McKillop?
Thank you for that, and through the chair, that's a brilliant idea, to be able to package information for school councils and to be able to sort of use them as an extension of our messaging and to use them to share that message with their community. Another area that we are looking for, when I was talking about the buckets of pieces to help with the internal communications, part of that is social media guidelines. And while the focus of that is going to be particularly staff, we are going to be incorporating some of the social media guidelines to extend that to our school council chairs. So that's going to be some exciting work that comes again through PIC. And as we get to the point where we are able to share those guidelines with them and we start to foster that online community, I love the idea of packaging some information as we share information to help them extend our voice. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Trustee Deeth, follow up?
No, that's wonderful, and thank you, Sean. I mean, I know that it has been, to echo what was already been said, it has been an incredible year, and just thank you for all the work and that you put into this. That's fine. I just had one other comment, but again, thank you for all the work on this. It has been extremely challenging, and I know, and the comment that I was just going to make was, even though there's many, we know about, you talked about the information fatigue, and that's true, but then there are also, I know, people who like that amount of detail and communication, so it's a challenge, I know, to meet the needs of both. So I just appreciate all you do to meet the varying needs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Deeth. Trustee Miller.
Hi. I don't have any specific questions at the moment, but just a quick comment. I do want to say thank you to Sean and to his team. I don't think the difficulties of this year could be understated. It's been overstated. It's been incredibly difficult, and I know that it's a lot of the plans, particularly the parent portal, didn't roll out the way that we would have wanted them to. But I just appreciate the tact and the patience that your team had over and over again, because I know, we had many community members coming, parents in particular, coming to us very frustrated, but once we were able to put them in contact with the team, their experience was what it needed to be. So I look forward to hopefully, a better year on all fronts, but thank you again just for all the work and the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Looking to trustees in the room. Any comments or questions? I have a few people on the list. I'll start with Student Trustee Hessler.
Thank you, and through the chair, could you provide a little bit more information towards the digital storytelling aspect?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thank you. Through the chair, I'll bring your attention to page 7.5, and this is really exciting for us because we're creating a structure to be able to collect these stories and provide a more of an organized outlet for it. Sometimes our vision is really, sometimes if you go to a magazine website or different news outlet sites, you see quite a dynamic flow of news articles, videos, stories, and we want to be able to do that. So when we look at some of the audiences that we want to reach and to tell the stories, we know that our audiences may not have a lot of time to read a feature story, but they might want a short minute clip or video. So we're going to be able to adjust to that and make sure that we can tell some stories. So some of the ideas are like a minute with students, profiling staff, so leaders in their field, what are they doing to help support student success? A day in the life of a school. We've never actually done an Instagram takeover. It's still something I would really love to do. And Instagram stories too, huge, right? And we're, when we profile some of our partners, we're the idea that we're all in this together. And so what are some really innovative programming that they're doing to help us and to tell those stories in a way that's engaging and can connect with our audiences? And, various programs, there's a lot of work around some of our programs in schools that we really highlight the benefit that they're helping support students. So those are some of the features of the components, the framework of our digital storytelling. And I'm just looking forward to being able to, have the ability to tell those great stories.
Thank you. Student Trustee Hessler, follow up?
Yes. So Thank you. That actually sounds like really cool. Like that's
we'll be in touch.
Yes. I know with my generation particularly, we don't particularly use information from the HWDSB sites. So the promotion of information through social media is extremely important. I wonder for the digital storytelling aspect, if we could include maybe people's stories from their jobs as well. And this would be a good, similarly, just kind of a way to keep students engaged, and as well as so they can sample a variety of career paths as well.
That's excellent. Yes, I absolutely love that idea, and that's something we can certainly take away. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Anything further?
No further comments or questions.
Thank you. Next, I had Trustee Buck on my speakers list.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to acknowledge Student Trustee Hessler's question regarding just adapting to our audience. So we're in the middle, we're really just in the early years of a major communication shift. So being on the cutting edge and being there for that change and embracing it, I think it is vital as we're seeking to engage students, but also parents, and finding the ways that they're communicating, meeting them where they are. So such a key point. I do want to revisit just for a quick second Trustee Deeth's point around our school council Facebook pages or other social media platforms that may be used, like Instagram or Twitter. And I want to thank Manager McKillop for stating that they're working on building those guidelines and just how vital that is. You think of so many different possible scenarios where maybe the chair of a school council is running a Facebook page, for instance, and then their kids graduate, and what happens to that page, and our name is still attached to it. So utilizing it as part of our communications, but then oversight, so we don't end up with vast numbers of dead pages, so to speak. So that's just so important as we're looking to monitor what is being said on behalf of our school board, and just being aware there's a communications piece where we can receive feedback right there in real time from parents and caregivers too. So good to hear. I did also want to ask, is there any in the guidelines your department is looking to put together, are we looking at how those staff members who identify on their social media pages as HWDSB employees, would there be guidelines around their conduct in any of those spheres?
Manager McKillop, or I guess to the director as well. I'll start with the director.
Yeah, so thank you through the chair. I think what Trustee Buck has identified is that there's a lot of social media platforms, and many sometimes staff or school councils will use our name connected to a Facebook page. And it's virtually impossible to monitor all the digital platforms that are out there but until something is brought to our attention. So we're going to try to work on how do we standardize. You heard around email guidelines. We'll also be working on social media guidelines and standards for our staff, but also for our school council chairs around what social media platforms we might have, available for them, and to try to encourage them to use our standards and our forms versus opening up their own. It's very difficult to control or monitor what other people might do, but if we provide them an opportunity to educate and provide one for them with some norms, I think that will be an important focus of the work of Sean and his team. But I'll ask if Sean could add any more to that.
Yeah, thank you. Just to echo what you said, I think that the idea about the guidelines is that we're providing an opportunity for school councils to engage online and to have them sort of come into the fold of HWDSB. So we see a lot of Facebook pages that might be external to our board or disconnected from from the school itself. And I think that it's really important for us to help provide guidelines for anybody who's operating an account. And these guidelines will even extend to school clubs, like student clubs, like people who are operating a social media account with some affiliation to us. These are what the guidelines would be. Who would they be for? And so definitely, and having some guidance. I know that a lot of administrators come to us with some challenges that they experience through social media. And these guidelines will be able to really pull together some of the best practices and policies and procedures and guidelines that we have existing to help really sort of support that idea of helpful messaging and helpful decorum through social media.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
No further questions.
Thank you. Next, I had Trustee Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My goodness, I think this is probably one of my favorite reports that comes to board every year. So thank you to Manager McKillop for bringing this forward. Just a few high-level observations and a little question afterwards, if that's okay. I think, this isn't just an observation based on the report that you've provided us tonight, but also an observation that I've been making over the year, which is that your team, Manager McKillop, your entire team, including Amber, Mark, and everyone else, is, in my opinion, the modular example for what public relations, for what corporate communications, for what partnerships is meant to look like for an organization. And it's hard for me to imagine a more hardworking and effective team than what we have now. Mind you, there are always learning opportunities, and I think we learn those along the ways. And a perfect example of capturing those learning opportunities would be through the thought exchange, right? So even then, it's how we learn from these experiences and look to learn from them that I think, I don't think I could be more proud of the team. So thank you for the work that you and your team is doing. With that, my little question at the end is, with regards to the standardization of MS Teams that was done back in May, I'm wondering if you could speak to that decision, and because in my mind, it's like MS Teams versus Zoom. So the decision was made, sure. Were we hoping to follow up on that decision to reevaluate our options moving forward? I'm wondering what the remainder of the school year looks like and perhaps what the future looks like if we would ever consider a different standardized platform. Of course, I'm coming from the perspective of Zoom University, which is how I'm doing my master's degree. But I was hoping if you could speak to that. And any relevant information is helpful for background information, but that is all. Thank you.
So I'll just direct that maybe to the director first to start.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair and to Trustee Galindo, thank you for the question. So one of the reasons we knew, let's go back. We knew that if we were going to promote blended learning as an expectation, that we needed to standardize our digital tools. And we know, and I say digital learning tools, there are many digital tools that support communication. So we looked at many different platforms that were already there. So we know there's Zoom, we know there's Google Suite, and then Microsoft Teams, and the list goes on and on. So one of the reasons we use is what are some of the digital standard tools we already have? So Microsoft Teams was already part of our Office 365 suite, which we pay on an annual basis. And through that, Microsoft has provided some training for us, in addition to security and privacy that are an important piece around engaging in these forms. I know we've heard through free versions of Zoom and free versions of Google, what we've heard out there. And the biggest thing is around privacy and security. So second reason was around fiscal responsibility. It is a virtual platform that we already had in our suite. And the third reason, and you've heard around the hub, which is so many different versions, but the hub is a learning management system that we already promoted in our secondary schools. It's free from the Ministry of Education. And we found, and D2L, Desire to Learn, who owns the hub, worked closely with Microsoft to make sure we could provide a Microsoft Teams Edu version where a one point of entry through Microsoft Teams and then to access the hub through Microsoft Teams. So those were the reasons, and there are many other tools. So we wanted to make sure we hit the privacy, the fiscal responsibility, because we already had Office 365, and to capitalize on that tool, and something that would also integrate into the hub learning management system that the ministry makes available for us, that we already promoted in our secondary panel, and we're seeing more uptake of that in elementary. So those were the three key reasons through the chair.
Manager McKillop, do you want to add anything?
Sure, just two quick comments. It was great to see that the standardization of that particular platform, I think, was really helpful to the success of the school council night. And I know a lot of the parents were comfortable in that environment. And as we do a lot of outreach, we work with different, like particular me and my team, we work with different platforms. So it is nice that we have that one platform that we can all use. And we've really converted public health to Teams. So they use a different service at the city, but they're quite good at Teams now.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Trustee Galindo?
Just if there was any cost considerations that you have at the top of your mind, do we know how much it would have cost to integrate a Zoom system as opposed to MS Teams throughout our board? Or if we don't have the information, it's fine, but I'm curious if there will ever be a scenario where we're going to follow up on that decision and yeah. Those are the last two follow-up questions. Thank you.
Director Figueredo?
Yeah, so through the chair, no, we don't have a cost, what it would cost. We know we looked at people who asked about Google, the full Google suite, and that would have been an additional cost. So we decided to, what's in our suite that we can currently use was our number one priority that would offer the same functionality, although maybe a little different. And you've seen Microsoft Teams functionality evolve since the spring to now, as we provide them feedback as well. So at this point in time, we felt that tool provided all the functionalities as the other tools, without any additional cost to the board.
Thank you. Anything else, Trustee Galindo? I believe I had Trustee Johnstone on the list.
Thank you. To Officer McKillop and to your whole team, I want to start by acknowledging, as many of my colleagues already have, how much phenomenal work you and your team has done this year. This year has been a hard year. We've had significant challenges that, as a board, we've had to confront and face that required immediate and professional communications. I think it's important to acknowledge that you and your entire staff team have risen to the occasion in the utmost professional manner, and we sincerely appreciate that. We are fortunate as a board to have you and your staff team, and not just the expertise that you have brought, but I would say the learning on the spot that has occurred. And that whenever you have met or the board has met challenges that we aren't prepared for, that you have reached out to the right resources and adapted very quickly, and we appreciate that. I think that over the year, it's whenever we have bad feedback, negative feedback, it always hits us close to heart. We take that with so much more weight than we do the positive feedback. And I think it's really important that when we look in the year in review, to know how many times you have done an excellent job. And that there has been on so many occasions where we aren't hearing concerns, and it's because of the good work that's being done. And on occasions when there has been glitches, that there's been a quick response in order to address the concerns, and again, in a very professional manner. So please take that back to your staff team. That's important to note. And it's important to note that the Board of Trustees recognizes the work that you and your team are doing. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think some of the parts in here that I think are extremely important that I find important to highlight are the questions that you're asking, especially on page 7-2. Do leaders have what they need to be effective in the system? Do staff know where to find information? Do parents engage with HWDSB through online opportunities? And I would say number 4 is the most important. Do students feel connected and engaged? These are, and then of course number 5 as well, with regards to our partners. These are significant questions, and I think that we'll be looking forward to a deep delve into this information. This year is unprecedented as it has been, is offering important learning opportunities for us to not only take what we're doing well, but to reflect and to do it much better. I think that across Ontario, we have been leaders in many ways on a variety of fronts, and there's been other areas that we're looking across the province to learn from. But I think starting with these questions, these are key, and that gives me confidence that we are asking the right questions in order to arrive at the right answers. The only area that I would recommend is more of a high-level systems review. We have had a number of opportunities to learn this year, and in terms of how we engage, when things have gone right, why they're going right, and when things have glitched, why they're glitching. I think that whenever I'm taking an organizational look, those happen when we look at more of a system of checks and balances. And I think that, and I know you'd mentioned on page 7.4, and I really appreciated it, acknowledging some of the challenges that we had related to Parent Portal. And I think that it could have been Parent Portal, it could have been any number of items. And I think it's understanding not necessarily the details from Parent Portal, but how we as a system build in high-level checks and balances throughout the way. I know in discussions with even the vice chair comes out of healthcare, she talks about that in the healthcare system we have multiple checks and balances in place, and so looking as an organization to other major institutions that go through dramatic change on I would say at the same level, that we can perhaps learn from them in terms of building in those checks and balances and best practices. But otherwise, thank you very much for your good work and for your team's good work, and please continue it. Thank you.
And Manager McKillop, did you want to respond?
I'm just taking a breath. I told myself, actually, I just, getting a little emotional hearing you say that, so thank you. It's been a reflective year, and as you do this report, I told myself not to get too emotional because, we've been together, we're a family, and we're always here for each other, and so I think that came through loud and clear in this report, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, and I just have a couple of comments to add. I actually think most of it's been said, and again, we can't thank the team enough, and the collaborative work that's been done between your team and other departments, between our exec council, everyone working together is what's made this go as well as it has this year. And I'll also say that I appreciate that you've acknowledged where there's been learning opportunities. The parent portal would be that one example that I think our communities would say, what exactly happened? And I know that we've all been looking at and you've reflected on, well, how do we avoid that type of issue in the future? But I think we're also looking at the opportunities with parent portal. So online forms for the first time, I know parents have wondered why we got those stacks of paper forms every year. And we're seeing that shift online. So I think there's great opportunities, and I do appreciate you highlighting the learning there. I also appreciate that you shared, and there's been some delay in building sort of a customer service model. And I think one of the things that may be emerging from our vast amount of communications out from the board is sometimes parents or families or staff are saying, but how do I communicate back to the board? And I think that would be part of that customer service model that we'll be looking forward to building as part of the next strategic directions and future work, because it's complicated, right? How can you be responsive when you get immediate feedback? And I know right now that tends to fall on a lot of our team members, our superintendents, some of which are in the room, their administrative assistants, teachers, principals, and we have a number of different people in the system that are doing their best to be responsive. But with the large system that we have, and we have this much communication going out, I think there's hopefully going to be an opportunity and maybe some new technical tools that will help us allow for that dialogue, because communication ideally goes two ways. But otherwise, I think all of my other questions were answered. So I will just, again, thank you for the report, and thank you to your team and to all of our staff for working so hard on communications this year. We really, really appreciate it. I think you've heard loud and clear. With that, we will look to receive this report. So can I have someone move in the room perhaps to receive the report? Trustee Galindo, seconded by Trustee Johnstone. Is anyone opposed to receiving the report? Seeing none in the room, on the line, is anyone opposed to receiving the report? Hearing none, and again noting Trustee Pakin-Miller and Trustee Tutt are not in our virtual setting. That is received. Thank you. And now looking for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Johnstone and a seconder. Trustee Buck, thank you. Is anyone opposed to adjourning? Seeing none on the line. Hearing none. Thank you, trustees and staff and community members in the audience for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful night.